Hi class, Tyler here with a persuasive speech on the orca whales and how their lives are in SeaWorld. Natives many years ago who lived in the coast of the Northern Territories called the orcas, or what we know today, killer whales, as blackfish, an animal they said was very spiritual and was not to be meddled with. People are struck with their beauty and their grace. They can relate and communicate and sense things happening from miles around. Like all mammals, the orca whale is a social creature. They work in teams to get food, raise their offspring, and use distinctive ways to communicate with a language that sounds so consistent and unique. Trainers have developed friendships with those in captivity and learned about their playful habits. There is harmony between humans and whales. However, there is no peace for the whale in captivity. Dozens of violent reports from SeaWorld have proven that large animals content in the open ocean should not be constrained in a small tank only to be forced to entertain the rest of its life. If you have seen the SeaWorld commercials where the orca whales are gliding in air around the bay and into the stadium, giving you a sense that they are happy and free or just waiting for you to go and see them, you have been fooled. If you were to be thrown in a small cage against your will, torn away from your children, forced to perform in front of massive screaming crowds, how would that make you feel? I would like to talk about how SeaWorld not only breeds the orcas in captivity, but how they lie to the public and deny that it was not the aggravation from whales that caused the deaths of several people working close with these peaceful creatures. After watching the documentary Blackfish, many of the trainers confessed that their relationship with these orcas were for fun. They really enjoyed what they were doing with their careers. Sarah Berg, a former SeaWorld trainer, as well as John Jett and John Hargrove, Dean Gomersall, they all said that they liked working with these whales, and that it seemed that the whales liked working with them as well, especially Telecom, which was one of the first males that they shipped in, was actually caught out in the wild when Telecom was only 4 years old or so. She said that he always swam straight to them like right away, and really liked playing around with them, and she never once thought that this whale could ever hurt anyone. John Jett said that Telecom was a real joy to work with. He always responded to him and seemed to want to interact. Many other trainers said that they actually knew very little about the way the whales are. They knew a great deal about training them in their job, but not about the orca in general. SeaWorld taught all their trainers to basically answer the visitors' questions falsely, one of them being that the whales live 30 to 40 years in the wild and much longer in confinement. By 1980, though, researchers already found that they have lifespans equal to humans. They were also taught to say that the floppy fin occurs in 25% of killer whales, when in truth, dorsal collapse happens in less than 1% to those whales in the wild. All captive males have the dorsal collapse from either depression or not using it as much, because the orca can travel great distances naturally with the strength in its fins and body, but when they're in a tank they can't really do that. To understand this struggle and what I'm getting at, I'll talk about a little bit about the orcas. Just briefly, life expectancy for the male orca in the wild is 50 to 60 years, females 100 years. They work in teams when it's time to hunt and use psychological mind games on their prey. They kind of have fun a little bit, but mostly just to disorient their prey, and that's how they work. They actually work together to get their food. It's just absolutely great just to see how they use strategy. Completely have many different behaviors and personalities, and use what sounds close to like an actual language with high-pitched bleeps, and frequencies and different tonal ranges. They have an extension of the brain that forms the paralimbic cleft. That processes emotion that is easily seen in orca communities. They have the sense of self and family bonding. The female orcas are usually the bullies. It's a very matriarchal society for them, and the males usually keep their distance unless it's for breeding. But the way SeaWorld houses their whales is really cramped. Um, they don't really have a whole lot of room to move around, mainly just for performance. Um, but they're not being whales. They're just in these little pools. They put a 12,000-pound whale, or the Tillicum, as everyone knows, in a tank with 3 other females and trainers, and they began to report bruises and bite marks on Tillicum, who was always in their personal space. SeaWorld then isolated Tilly, but was never seen by the other male whales. So you got Tillicum, who is always being beat up because Tillicum can't go anywhere. But then Tillicum's put by himself in a pool, and there's no social bond there with the other whales. So it's really messed up. Nearly 40 years ago, the first batch of orcas were corralled into coves. Men on speedboats using bombs they would throw in the water to herd them in a certain direction. One of the men there, he didn't think that what they were doing was completely wrong until he heard the babies start to cry when they're separated from their mothers, and he said it was the most heartbreaking thing that's ever happened to him before. It just felt totally wrong. There is known to be over 70 reports of violence from orcas in SeaWorld. Sarah Berg states that 30 of those happened before she worked at SeaWorld as a trainer, and was not told about any of them. John Sillick was a 26-year-old trainer who during a show was crushed by a 6-ton orca. Though he lived, he was in serious condition and had multiple surgeries for skeletal reinforcement. The higher-ups said that it was a trainer error and bad timing, but other trainers knew he didn't do anything wrong after looking at the video. Many of the trainers did not know about this till a week after. Another violent outburst happened with Tamari, a trainer who oftentimes spent time with whales without a spotter, which is a really bad idea. She was playing with her foot, putting it on Orchid. Orchid was one of the female whales there, one of the more aggressive whales. Orchid then bit onto Tamari's foot and began pulling her into the pool. She survived with a compound fracture and was lifted from the pool after the other trainers lifted the gates to let Katara in. Katara was one of the dominant whales, and it instantly made Orchid release the trainer. The most brutal fatality was what happened to 40-year-old Don Brownshoe in 2010 and was put on the news quite often. It's one of the most controversial things, but I don't know why everyone thinks that she just slipped in water and drowned when that's really not the case. She was one of the most dedicated trainers at SeaWorld who had worked so much with the whales. One day she was getting Tillicum to perform and wave at the audience with his flipper, but she was running out of fish to give him for all the things he did, and I'm sure that Tillicum was getting very frustrated. And then after the performance, Don got into the water with Tilly, and Tillicum grabbed her arm and thrashed her around in the pool, basically just mutilated her, and she died and was later pulled from the pool when it was safe to get her body out. The others did not know if it was just subtle play at first, but it was definitely hostility. Yet SeaWorld claims that she slipped and drowned. Eyewitnesses told news crews a whole other story, and they they came up with something else that was just ridiculous. A woman died, and they refused to accept responsibility, basically blaming her for having too long of a ponytail, and the whale grabbed it, pulling her into the water, which is just absolutely silly. Finally, in 2012, Judge Ken Welch uh, issued a ruling on OSHA versus SeaWorld during shows. The trainers now must remain behind barriers separated from the orcas. And basically what you see here of the family tree is at the top is Tilikum that provides the sperm to the bank that SeaWorld uses to breed all these other whales that they have. And that all these whales have that same aggression, that violent streak that Tilikum has, basically. To conclude, I really just want to say that it's not necessarily the whale's fault. It's this small space that they keep them in that's making them go crazy. There is just no right in it, nothing morally acceptable about keeping this highly intelligent creature in a small concrete tank. It has proven to be too traumatizing, depressing, and making the orcas very frustrated having to perform, and it's very demanding. I had to cut this speech a little short and didn't quite cover all the things that happened, but SeaWorld is this multi-billion-dollar theme park run by tycoons who only see it as a dollar sign for them. When I last went there, I not only saw it with the whales or anything, but with the polar bear just walking back and forth, I just knew right away it just looked miserable being stuck in there. To really put a stop to SeaWorld is basically just don't go. Don't throw any more money at them or give them any more reason to keep animals captive and away from their natural state. There's more peace in actually just going out, whale watch. They could be in pods of 10 to 30 or even 100. You know, there's just more fun in that, I think. I hope I have spread this concern a little better. This barbaric time we live in where we think that it's okay when it's really not. It just needs to be realized. That pretty much concludes my speech. Thanks for listening.